Good morning. This is Gabriel, King of Orion. And Bronco. Look at that guy. Yeah. Hey, Bronco. You want attention? And Mr. Andy. I'm going to grab the ball for him. But while I'm doing that, I'm going to give a real quick Orby report. The last day or so, I've been trying to shorten the length of the videos and focus fire on specific topics. And for this Orby report in particular, hello, Bronco. Yeah, I got the ball. Whoop. And there's my Sweet Pea. Woo! Come on, Sweet Pea. Whoop! I've been thinking a lot about the mission system based on the conversations I've been having, and it was ostensibly the introduction for new players back in the day. It was like best ISK returns, best way to grind, which ain't really the case anymore. And I've been thinking about the mining missions that they have in there. I'm sorry, bud. I teased you there. Let's get that ball going. I think, obviously, they're undervalued, right? There's they're a subsidization for Veldspar, Scordite, and Pyroxeres. And those three resources are the best introductory ores, period. But I think Nettie's very drastically underestimated how many bots were going to be out there. This morning, for example, I had a really good time going through my daily ritual. I wake up, I feed the critters, I feed the humans, and then, like, in between those little moments, I get chances to send ships to do things. It's not exactly botting, but it's very much passive play. And for the areas where I play, it's a little bit dangerous, but I never invest anything more than I'm willing to lose. I always use ventures for that sort of passive park and point play. So I had a venture parked in the location for Operation Ignition just to see kind of like the feel and the tempo of play there. And like, despite being really, really freaking close to Clover Jita, it's very low tempo, which makes it really easy to get Pyroxeres. In Tech 4, T4 mining belts, there's one Pyroxeres rock on each of them. And there's Veldspar and there's Scordite. So I did a little bit of like real quick nibbling. And it turns out with a basic venture, you can get what you need for one of them missions in like 2 cycles tops for each of them in the advanced category. Where'd you put your ball, bud? In the advanced category. Thank you. There we are. And that's an easy 200,000-ish passive play, which I complained about. Whoop. Sit. Bronco, sit. Mr. B, sit, please. I didn't really complain about that in one of the other videos. Maybe I did. I know I said that the best ISK per action is the faction warfare missions, but it's also relatively high risk. So long as you're using a ship that is worth very little, that risk is mitigated. But another downside to that is the timing, the tempo. There's a very low tempo to that form of play. It takes a long time to reach those destinations, and you're checking in, fairly regularly for them. Meanwhile, like encounter missions, very low reward but extremely low risk, and the tempo of play is really low as well. I found myself banging out each of the missions, refreshing every 15 minutes plus or minus, depending on where I was within my tasks, and killing them really easy. And I could see how that'd be a good outlet for Concord missions, but there really isn't enough variety or interest generated within the civilian side of the game to kind of like compete with combat. Bronco, sit. And that's a shame. I know over the long haul, industry is the best return for ISK because those assets, while they have a slower velocity than ISK and liquid, Uh, if you accelerate that velocity of the asset compared to the velocity of the money, it's a lot easier to turn a profit, which I wish real life was as easy as all that, as simple as that. But that's the nature of the beast. When industry is crystallized to the point that you have two similar options, it's generally the hallmark of an oligopoly, which is not easy to access, though it does indicate like the moments before access begins. Generally, competition stagnates at the point where there's two options, take Coke or Pepsi, for example, until a third option like kind of catches them off guard, whatever that option might be. And it's usually because they try and like cut costs. Cutting costs and reduction in quality with the expectation of maintenance of value and shitification of the internet, for example, but also like in shitification of products. How Coke cans are getting smaller, right? But you're getting the same product at the same prices. That sort of thing generally like is not a good sign of the health for the company. Whereas other companies, hopefully on the rise, will look for more straightforward products, closer to a natural state. And yeah, that's kind of the Orbi report for the day, is just tinkering with missions, general musings of memetic encapsulation and organizational structures, how options and decision trees crystallize to a sort of two-way split, because that's the bare minimum required for an interesting choice, right? Red versus blue, left versus right, Coke versus Pepsi, whatever you want to call it. Once things split in twain, once an industry or a field becomes minimized to A or B, not an or B, but A/B testing, that's the minimum amount of thought required for it to remain interesting. Which means third options become a breath of fresh air. So I'm hoping, like, as the US of A moves through these troubling times, more folks start looking for third options. Within Eve Echoes, they've got 4 options for a very specific reason. Trilinear parity, like rock, paper, scissors, is one of the most common forms of game design, for good reason, because that's like, it's a step beyond A or B, right? And it's where things get interesting to the point of entry. Tic-tac-toe, for example. Like, that's one of the primary teaching games out there. Like, this is how a game functions. You make these choices. You have 3 choices up here, 3 choices right here, 3 choices right here. So 9 overall, but as the game reduces, it comes down to 3, and then 2, and then 1 for a cat's game. But ideally, you hit the victory point for a kid earlier, far earlier. The same is true for any sort of, like, memetic choice. I'm going to start going into woo-woo land, talking too much. I need to publish that book, Memetic Organization. I've got most of it. There's just a few chapters I want to bang out at the very end, talking about how to fix democracy. Because fundamentally, first past the post is the limiting factor. That's why we have this trend towards duopoly and oligopoly, and then oligarchy. It's because we don't have catch-up mechanics for third parties. We don't have an easy entry point for consideration of what's actually healthy for people. Once the red team clears out and self-destructs completely, because like that's what they seem to enjoy doing historically. It'll be interesting to see the explosion of variety that arises as a result when a singular state divides into ideally 4 regions and then 50-ish states below that, like a re-examination of what it means to be a state. I'm hoping that's when, the really cool, creative, and fun, interesting products and experiences come back on to the market. But what do I know? I'm full of it. I don't really know anything. I do know Eve. I know Eve Echoes. I know how to have fun in there. Anyway, back to running them missions. It's a pittance of ISK in, but I wish they would put like some sort of secondary or tertiary product, some sort of return that wasn't just the Concord missions, because those are cool, but they're not assets. And while the accumulation of stockpiles of Scordite, Veldspar, and Pyrox series are nice assets to have, especially considering they're the best bang for your buck in terms of mineral efficiency, like Veldspar gives the best trit return, Scordite gives the second best trit return and the best pyrite return, whereas Pyrox series gives the best core 4 mix and is right at the danger point, like where you're risking your hide. They're not nearly as ISK efficient or good as compressed spaces. So I feel like there's some tuning that could be done there for the missions to make the excess, because it's the subsidized product that you get, some of the benefit from. I guess for like an entry level, for like a new player, like here's the ropes. They're not bad, but they're not great, right? Because once you hit Tech 7, you have access to pretty much everything that you'll ever have for an alpha, everything you need to get by, with the exception being Tech 9 rigs and things like that. Not rigs, modules. But that doesn't matter. I think they should spice it up with choice, being able to turn in at different locations for different rewards, or have different asset returns in exchange, right? So if I were to turn in Veldspar for ISK or resources of a different stripe, kind of like how Elite Dangerous does it, I feel like the encounter system would be a lot more useful as a means of suggesting the consideration that should come from the gameplay. Anyway, I've talked like twice as long as I probably should. I hope you all have a good day. Thanks. Bye.